my career would have not been possible 5 years earlier or 5 years later. I'm very aware of that. And that's why I'm still pushing for that luck factor, because in that time I was the last photographer that did a behind the scene photo kind of project before phones, Instagram, whatever. Now stories are being told through the phones of the players. And you don't need a photographer who is telling that story. Like, it was one of the last big sporting events where you didn't see the backstage story.
Welcome back to the Whoop Podcast. I'm your host, Will Ahmed, and we're on a mission to unlock human performance. My guest today is Paul Ripke, world-renowned photographer, artist, and guy who seems to know everyone in sports. We talk all about his career, how to make your luck, hanging out with some of the best athletes in the world and stories from that, and a whole lot more. That is the Whoop Podcast right now. All right, Paul, welcome to the Whoop Podcast.
Finally, thank you very much for the invitation. I'm proud to be here because finally I can talk in English. Normally my podcast is in German, so all my American friends can't really listen to it, and now I do something in English. It's nice.
You've been on Whoop for a while, actually.
5 years.
And you've been an amazing supporter of the brand, so we appreciate that.
Thank you. But do you remember how I... Let's start off with that.
Yeah.
Do you know how... Because I was a fan of the product, a heavy user of the product. And then I decided I have some Instagram following. I'm German. My main audience is German. And I said, I want to be a Whoop ambassador. And then I looked up Whoop ambassadors, and they were athletes.
Yeah.
I'm not. So I decided, let's talk it into existence. And do you remember how many emails I wrote you and how much I got on your nerves to be in this room?
You were like a 12 out of 10 for persistence, which,
Correct.
by the way, is something I respect because it's in part how I was able to build the company.
How did you what did you feel that, because my profile picture on Instagram is me naked on an inflatable dog in a pool.
Yeah.
I have a golden tooth. I'm visually a little weird, I have to admit. What did you think of the moment that person DM'd you every other day, like, hey, Will, we need to work.
Well, I'll tell you something. What I look for in any marketing conversation is authenticity.
Okay.
So, the fact that you authentically wore Whoop and really liked it was a good place to start. And look, you've got an audience that people where your fans really pay attention to what you have to say. So, those are the right seeds. And then, there's an element of, well, if we do something with this guy, at least he'll stop emailing me.
Get it off the table to the marketing people.
No, but in all seriousness, I think a lot of the way we think about performance is continuing to broaden our definition of performance. And you've been enormously successful in your career in your own way. And so the majority of people on Whoop are aspirational through a context that is not just athletics. And you represent part of how we're growing into that.
I feel like it too. Like, I very much feel like I'm the normal. What's the American expression for that? Like the normal next door.
Average Joe.
Average Joe. I'm average Paul.
Okay,
that's how I see myself in the Whoop world. And my feedback I provided out of a normal perspective, not a superstar high performer.
Well, when you started using the product, it was actually at the time probably a little more athletic focused.
Yes.
What did you gravitate to?
It was COVID, 100%. Like,
COVID,
it was once a friend of mine told me you can see
whether you have COVID.
Spikes, you can see it a couple of days before. So I was like, okay, this is interesting. And then it did help me. It stuck to my head. I listened to a podcast of you, and you said you can't manage what you can't measure. I'm still thinking a lot about that very simple sentence, which I did understand because I'm not a big measurer. Like, I don't care too much about, also because I don't like the numbers sometimes. So I did gravitate into more trying to create what I like and not measure it if it's successful or something. That makes me not a good business person, to be honest, not an entrepreneurial mind like yours. I just want to do stuff that I like. And also, I want to have fun. That's my main thing.
Well, I imagine you're very intuitive.
Very much, 100%.
Because you're a successful photographer, which in some ways is one of the most intuitive lines of work.
It's a weird thing too, like, because, like, a good photo is always what's on that photo, you know? So and you just said, like, I'm successful or I had a good career. It was mainly luck because I took pictures of people that were successful. It's not my skill or my talent. I really don't have a lot of talent. I maybe had a little bit of a talent to go into situations where people became successful. Bands I shot became successful. Teams I shot became successful. People became world champions, but not because of me. Like, I was just the plus one. I got very, very lucky, which is also why I'm a little bit. I'm going away from photography because I don't think I can hit that luck for another 10 years. So now I'm trying to tell my own.
What was the first moment where you said this could be a career, being a professional photographer?
Probably music, hip hop. I'm a hip hop kid. I grew up in a city with a lot of American soldiers. Like Western Germany, we had bases. So my city has had the same people living there as American soldiers. So hip hop was big. I was a hip hop DJ at the age of 15, and then I
And that's when you were working with Backspin.
correct. Oh, you did research. That's
That's right.
that's a German hip hop magazine. And I took pictures of rappers, and it did open a door. Actually, it did open. I did like a 3 month moment after finishing my school at the age of 20 in San Francisco, and I couldn't get into any bars or concerts of hip hop people because it's 21 plus. So I asked Backspin, the German magazine. They sent me like a fax letter and I signed up as a photographer, and there's no age, like they didn't control my age. I snuggled myself into the bars that I was not supposed to be, and that helped me a lot. So, and then I took pictures, and that started kind of kept the ball rolling, and I went from music. Seriously, I really got very, very lucky because I took pictures of artists that are superstars now at their very first concerts, for example, and that was not my fault.
Have you stayed in touch with them?
Yes, still very, very good friends. But also,
So that
uh,
piece isn't luck. They don't
y
stay in touch with
correct.
you
The
unless
social
they think
part
something
is
of it.
what's also not luck, I think, is I'm going away the moment I'm not excited about it, and that kind of repeats itself. So the moment because I'm super stoked. I can go somewhere and then I'm stoked. Like if you ask me to take pictures of the Boston Red Sox or something, then I'm gonna love it. But the moment I'm not 100% stoked, my pictures are gonna become not as good as they were before, you know? Like you
You have to be
see
committed to it. You have
correct.
to be focused. You have to be excited.
And this moment I'm leaving. Then
Yeah.
I'm looking for a new topic. So I left the music, went into soccer. Probably my biggest thing. You are interested, but the Americans aren't that much. But in Germany, it's by far the sport number one, soccer or football. And Germany became world champion 2014, and I was their team photographer in Rio de Janeiro. So I
With
took
the German team.
correct, yeah,
Wow.
which a lot of Germans know me because of those pictures and the story about
What
those
year
pictures.
was that?
2014, and that was by far my highlight of my photography career because like I'm like as a German, soccer is the most important thing. Then it's a World Cup that happens every 20, 30, 50 years. I don't know that we win that, and I'm the guy taking like the moment of the final whistle.
That was the Götze goal?
Correct, that's a goal, and I broke pretty much every rule there is. I was working with them before, but I didn't have a pass. I wore a suit that's kind of like I
Yeah, you
really
fit in.
tricked myself into that next to the field, and then I knew all the players. And the moment of the final whistle, I just ran on the field and took pictures, and nobody really understood what was going on because I didn't have a big camera. It was a Leica M
And
camera
those were
with
the photos that made it.
yes, that's the pictures every German remembers. We did a book about it. I was banned for 4 years of any FIFA game
You were
worldwide.
banned because of that incident,
Yeah, I broke a lot of rules on that day. Like I've
but it was worth it.
for me 100%, not so much for the other photographers because like that was not super nice of me. But I've been around a lot of very, very, very successful people. They all have one thing in common. They're competitive. I think they want to win. And I wanted to win on that night. Like I didn't care about the other photographers. I wanted to win. For me, I would do exactly the same always and ever again.
Well, you've described multiple times this sort of feeling of being lucky throughout your career, and I often scrutinize that definition of people's success because I think when you look at the broader set of things that you probably had to do, like you told us
Correct.
the
Yeah.
story that worked, you told us the band that got big,
Yeah.
mean, how many other bars were you in with people that didn't get big,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
So I always like to push back a little on this definition of I got lucky as sort of this pseudo humility to the whole experience, because I believe that you can help make your own luck. I mean, I've been incredibly fortunate and lucky too, but you can help make your own luck
Correct.
through all the areas of persistence and all the rejections, the failures. The people don't see those when they pick the lucky story.
Correct, and it's also like, isn't there like a wall tattoo that says like luck is when opportunity meets preparation?
Sure, there you
Kind
go.
of true too. Like
Yeah, that's right.
I was prepared in that moment, and I went for it. I took it. Like I've full on encouraged, tried to
There,
win there, but
there's also an interesting element with luck where you increase the likelihood of being lucky if you believe something can happen. It's like you find the way for the circumstance to arrive.
just like me DMing you about our work.
Yeah,
It's
I mean, you manifested it. Here we
I'm
are.
pretty like I can go on the nerves of people if I want to do something, yeah,
Yeah.
which helps. Yeah.
The football ban for 4 years, when you learned that news, were you like, "Oh, man," or are you kinda like, "Ah"?
I loved it. Like it's in a golden, like it's an official paper from FIFA. So
Oh, you've, like, framed it?
yeah, I framed
Of
it, and
course.
it's on top of
Yeah.
my desk.
Because it's a
So
good story.
I'm also a little bit proud of it because I do think pioneeristic things, and you truly are a pioneer in what you do,
Thank you.
happen if you break some rules. You can't play by all the rules to do exactly, yeah, you got to challenge a couple of things, and I'm sure you can tell me 20 of those stories in your life where you didn't accept no, or this is how it should be done, and that's why you're sitting here in an amazing office with 400 people working on that great product that helps people being better versions of themselves.
Yeah, it's a real contest of persistence.
And some timing luck again. So like the timing is, if you would have started Whoop 5 years earlier or 5 years later, would it be as successful?
It's a fascinating question because it also gets at the question of, like, what is time, which we could explore. This notion of technology that continuously measures your body was going to exist. And I certainly think that I played a role in creating it, but there's a certain inevitability, at least I believe, about health monitoring. There's these moments of sort of catalysts for spaces, but there's also a certain inevitability. And in the case of health monitoring, I think there's a certain inevitability of 24/7 health monitors telling you everything about your body, predicting performance, and so forth. The argument for the 5 years later, 5 years earlier, meaning that Whoop doesn't exist, is if it were 5 years earlier, I don't know if all the components and the tech that we needed
Mhm,
and the state of the iPhone and this and that would have been in the right place for us to create the technology, or, it would have taken much longer. The argument for 5 years later, it not working is, well, that'd be a long time to be trying to catch up to what then would have been a more mature market or a more mature space.
mhm.
So through both of those lenses, you could argue that it had to start in 2012, right when I was graduating. The counterpoint would be like when we were starting the company, a lot of people thought we were 5 years early, and a lot of people thought we were 5 years late.
Okay.
When we were starting the company, like, people said, "I don't know if the technology even is available to do what you wanna do or what you're claiming you can do."
Mhm,
And probably more people said, "Well, you're actually too late. Apple's doing it, Nike's doing it,
mhm,
fill in the blanks doing it." The first group of people, I think, were actually more right than the second group of people. And so that sort of implies that the technology had more to do with how you saw the market and how you created the scores and how you thought about the experience, what you didn't do. I mean, a huge mistake that a lot of the tech companies in the space made is they all kind of copied each other on certain
mhm.
paradigms. One obvious one being like smartwatch and having a screen, which of course Whoop doesn't. Anyway, that's the long-winded answer.
Do you sometimes regret that you didn't start earlier or later?
I'm
Do you
ex
even regret
I
anything?
I'm
Yeah.
extremely happy with where I am today in life
Mhm,
across a variety of parameters, and I do think that, like, if you go back in time and change one thing, it might we're never sitting here, so to speak. It's like that butterfly effect.
Yeah.
So no, I don't have a lot of regrets.
It's good. I'm the same. I don't regret
Yeah.
anything, but I do know, just to give you my side, my career would have not been possible 5 years earlier or 5 years later. I'm very aware of that, and that's why I'm still pushing for that luck factor, because in that time, I was the last photographer that did a behind-the-scene photo kind of project before phones, Instagram, whatever. Now stories are being told through the phones of the players, and you don't need a photographer who's telling that story. Like,
Hmm.
it was one of the last big sporting events where you didn't see the backstage story. So I profited of that insanely, and so like I'm happy where I am right now, and I did had a lot of luck, and in my life also the factor talent is there, and I'm seeing a lot of very talented photographers, and they're all way better than me. Like they're artistic, talented people. Like I'm not an artist. I'm a service. Like I'm happy if you're happy, if somebody is happy I'm taking a picture of. I'm not happy if I do a great picture and the other person says I don't like that picture. I never was a true artist. I always was a service orientated guy who had the photography as a tool, which brought me close to a lot of very, very inspiring people. And that's one of the questions I have for you as well, because we both worked with Cristiano Ronaldo. You did a little bit more than me, but you probably can say the same thing that I say. Like one of the most humble, friendly, social. Like he's not cocky at all. He's the most friendly guy. He opens your door. He carried my bag and everything. How did that start?
Hmm.
And how was I want to hear the backstory of Cristiano Ronaldo.
The Ronaldo story begins 10 years earlier, in the sense that we had this strong point of view as a company that we were going to build a product that pro athletes really liked.
Uh-huh.
And we weren't going to go after athletes in the sense that we're going to try to go pay a bunch of people to wear Whoop. We were going to build what we thought was great technology, and in turn, pro athletes would be our first market. And I bring that up because a lot of these really unbelievable people who wear Whoop just gravitated to the product on their own. And in the case of Ronaldo, we discovered, maybe it took like a year at least for us to realize that he was wearing it. And then, another year goes by and we keep seeing it in photos. And it's pretty clear, like, this guy's wearing this all the time. And obviously he's photographed fairly often, so you can keep up with that. So we had this unbelievable athlete on Whoop, and come, I want to say early this year, maybe it was January of this year, we got introduced. And so I told him that I was going to be in Riyadh. I happened to be in Riyadh for something else. And I said, do you want to meet up? And so he said yes. And so I went over to his home, and it was just two of us, and him and his manager Ricky, who's terrific. And we spent probably 2 hours together just talking about life and his training and why he started wearing Whoop, and how he got into it. And so it was really a great introduction. And you probably know a lot more about football than I do, just given where each of us grew up. But from, 30,000 feet, or, thousands of miles away, my impression of Cristiano was enormous rare talent, really successful, kind of playboy energy, like, just really good looking athlete who had an enormous number of followers. I didn't know that much beyond that headline. And so when I got to spend time with him, what really came through to me, which it sounds like came through for you, aspects of his humility, but also just an insane drive around understanding his body, and the degree to which he studies his body, and of course now uses Whoop to do so, was quite fascinating. And he had very detailed questions about certain metrics of his and how
That's
he,
exactly what I can see you two nerds
yeah,
sitting there and nerding about numbers, because he's a hard worker and very much
oh,
into numbers, like
hardcore,
crazy.
hardcore, and more intense probably than people realize. And so that got me excited. One, because, okay, here's someone who authentically is using the product. I don't
Yeah,
have to be like, oh, this is Whoop, it measures sleep. And two, he was a sports scientist. I mean, he
he is.
really he really was deep on data and understood biometrics and was super focused on different things around recovery and sleep. He was using other products, he was testing things. And so there was a piece of it where it was like, wow, this is a side of him that I don't know if everyone's seen. At least I hadn't seen it, and so that got me excited about a partnership. And then from there, we started exploring what that could look like, and he became an investor, and he became a global ambassador for us.
And he passed me in my referral link, I saw. So pretty fast. But we
Yeah,
do have one thing in common. We both used the product before. Is that something you see as a pattern, that whatever works in the partnership
totally.
kind of, so you're not going, because the other talk we had once at Waste Management Open, which still sticks to my head, you constantly said, like, we're not a marketing product at the end because we see how people use it. Like, it's the most visual product you can probably think of.
Yeah.
And the moment you take it off, we see it. And there's going to be footage of athletes, of VIPs, of influencers, of whatever. We see the authentic use case is there every single day, which is genius. Like, either
Yeah,
you're
I mean,
genius
look,
or you got lucky in that kind of
it's
thing. But
hard. I mean, it's
yeah,
hard to build something that people wear 24/7,
yeah,
but that's the only way to use the product.
yeah.
So, we need people to love the product, and that's first and foremost what we're after. And marketing at Whoop is really just storytelling of these authentic
Uh,
people like yourself and Cristiano and others who gotten value out of it in their own way.
it's a good success story. I like that, and I like the footage of it.
It was like 100 and whatever, 20 degrees in Riyadh as the summer, and then, the second Cristiano hits the button of, like, "We're going live,"
Yeah.
I don't know what happens to that poor phone, but, like, the
Oh,
data overload of
yeah.
millions of people looking
It's
at it,
crazy. Yeah.
we just were burning through phones because anytime he went live, between the sunlight and the streamers, the phone would just turn off. We were still anxious that it was gonna go off
Yeah.
or that we weren't gonna be able to save it, and so they literally brought a bag of ice out, and it was a clumsy handoff where
Into the
when they finished the video, they immediately stuffed the iPhone into an ice bucket. What's up, folks? If you are enjoying this podcast or if you care about health, performance, fitness, you may really enjoy getting a Whoop. That's right. You can check out Whoop at whoop.com. It measures everything around sleep, recovery, strain, and you can now sign up for free for 30 days. So you'll literally get the high performance wearable in the mail for free. You get to try it for 30 days, see whether you want to be a member. And that is just at whoop.com. Back to the guests. What
Totally
was
a
the
big fan.
context with which you were shooting Cristiano?
Nike. I did
Nike.
Nike stuff with Odell Beckham Jr., and they met and in Madrid. So we did like a Europe tour with Odell, and they met a couple of Neymar, and yeah, a couple of soccer players. That's what Nike's pretty good at, to bring together athletes of different goats, to be honest, like always a number one. And then they just do exactly what you experienced. They bring them together and then they go out and they just see whatever's happening.
You don't
So
strike me
like,
as someone who's ever been starstruck. Have you
no,
been?
not at all. I don't know if that's my childhood or after the soccer thing, I transformed into Formula One. And
Yeah.
it was 2016, so transformed meaning I went there and took pictures of Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas. So that's the two drivers and the team. In 2016, there was no Drive to Survive, so Formula One was one of the uncoolest things, at least in the US. I lived
Talk
already
about a
in.
show that changed the sport.
It's insane. It's proper insane what was there. And I got to experience firsthand with working with Lewis. He's probably one of the most impressive people I ever met. Did you meet him ever?
I've actually never met him. Why do you think he's so impressive?
Because he really drives change. Like, he really changed. He's a pioneer. And Formula One, for example, has, and I'm not like, for sure, Lewis is an 8-time champion, should be. He's 7, but he got stolen by one title of Max Verstappen. And Max Verstappen is a very good car driver, but he's not responsible for any change in that sport. Lewis is. He really brought young people. He was one of the first black drivers in there. Like, he really drove change into a very posh, rich white man sport. And that was so hard for him to do. And I experienced it firsthand, how many people tried to put stones in his way. And he still kept going. And he bet like against all odds, he became a 8-time world champion, I think, which is so impressive. And he's the most competitive person you've ever seen. And he wants to win every single time. If we would now play rock, scissors, stone, like, he would want to win
Yeah,
that.
sure.
He can't live with losing. And he's vegan. He's really, really a very impressive human being in the fact that he lives and what he does outside the sport too. And I'm curious to find out what he's now going to Ferrari, which if he becomes world champion in Ferrari, which is by far the coolest brand in Formula One, he's on the level of Senna then. Like he's like then nobody will ever question anything. He's already the GOAT, I think, of F1, and I'm deeply impressed and very honored to have worked with him 3, 4, 5 years. He's just an achiever. He really achieves change, and I've not seen many people do that. A lot of soccer players don't change anything. They just go. Cristiano did 100%, but if you go into first league German soccer players, they go to work. They try to be the best version of themselves, but they don't change anything. They don't change the system. Lewis Hamilton did change Formula One.
That is probably a great status of an athlete. I mean, if you wanted to sort of separate what's someone being a Hall of Famer to being someone who is an icon, that's one of the key criteria is they changed the sport.
Correct.
I mean, you look at Tiger Woods in golf, you look at Ronaldo in football, Steph Curry in basketball with what he did with 3-pointers.
Is that so? That's the question. I wouldn't name Steph Curry there. He's one of the best players, but I would name probably LeBron rather than.
I think LeBron is maybe a bigger icon than Steph Curry. And by the way, I'm a huge LeBron James fan and a huge Steph Curry fan. So I think both those guys are terrific. I think you can make the case, though, that Steph Curry changed basketball more because he was the first guy who started shooting from, 15 feet behind the three-point line, and it changed what everyone thought was a good shot. And then in turn, the stats people started saying, well, should every shot be a three-pointer? And if you look at the scoring averages today, they're all so much higher than they were before. Now, some of that's because the defense isn't as good, but a lot of it's because they just shoot more three-pointers. And I attribute most of that to Steph. And Lewis Hamilton, it sounds like, in your eyes, changed F1.
100%. Yeah. Like F1 wouldn't be where it is today without Lewis Hamilton. And he changed. Drive to Survive is also a big story about human storytelling, about the drivers being heroes. And like it's insane, especially in the American market. Like it didn't exist before here. And I worked while not being, I was on flights, and then people asked me like, what do you do? And I was very proud. And I told them, I work in F1. They said, what's F1? And after Netflix, I didn't say it anymore because people were like, oh, you work in F1? Ah, you need tickets. I need this, that. Insane what those sports people did.
So we've both been around very successful athletes. And I think, like you just cited, that Lewis Hamilton's the most competitive person you've ever been around. Yeah. And I think you could probably say something similar about Ronaldo. I get asked this, so I'm curious what your answer is. What do you notice is the difference between, say, Lewis Hamilton and, a top 5 driver in F1? So we're still talking about one of the best drivers in the world. Yeah. But when you say he's the most competitive person, what are you
I do believe then there's talent on top of that. Like they are hard workers, and there's something that can't be explained. And I think it's the same with Cristiano Ronaldo. There's something you can work on being even better, but there's something that people can't explain. I've witnessed it with Lewis. Like there were laps in qualifying. Nobody understood why he's now 4/10 faster than he was before. Like there's something weird, unexplainable talent in between things, hand-eye coordination, whatever it is in that point. You can analyze everything you want, but it just comes down to talent. And that greatness, I think all the people you talked about have. Like there's also greatness about Tiger Woods that nobody can really explain how he did that. And that's just the thing that I would say to that, because they all work hard. They're all very competitive. They all put the effort in they need to do, and they're good communicators. And to be fair, Lewis is one of the most social people. Once again, same as Cristiano, that I've ever seen. Like he's super nice to every person in the room. He says hello to everybody, and that brings you a long way too, I think, especially in a team sport when you're relying on other factors like cars or team members in sport and soccer.
I want to do a little on your Whoop data here for a second, which you allowed us to look at.
I know. I'd send it over. Yeah.
Okay. What are you feeling good about in your data? Your sleep performance, 84%, top 26% of males your age. Your top quartile?
I'm a good sleeper.
Good sleeper.
You
Great
know what's
start.
mainly about it is I live in California and I work in Germany. That is very good for sleep. I'm in bed sometimes at 8 p.m.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And it's annoying for my family. I have 3 children. And 2 days ago, I got into an argument because my 2 daughters, they're 18 and 15, came home and they were loud. And I was already sleeping at 8:42 or something. And I gave them a little text that's saying, like, hey, this is disrespectful. They said, it's not normal to be in bed at 8:24 or whatever. Yeah, I'm a good sleeper, right?
Yep. Now your recovery breakdown, 42% of the time in the green, 38% of the time in the yellow, 20% in the red. That's a little higher than I'd like to see, Paul. What's driving those red recoveries?
Food and alcohol.
Food and alcohol.
Alcohol is
That's your killer?
yeah, 100%. The older I get, the more I realize how bad alcohol is for me, which is probably normal, right? Out
Yep.
of your expertise. Um, but also, the more I realize I'm struggling to say no to alcohol. Like, it's probably an addiction. Like, everybody has an alcohol addiction, I guess.
Sure, yeah.
Just severe or more or less. But I do struggle, especially with the social component of it. Like if I'm around friends and they're all having beer, I mean, it's deep in German culture to drink a beer together. That's how
Yeah,
we
right.
meet. We meet for a beer. Um, and I did profit in my work career insanely. Like when I started in F1, the number one thing that put me in the positions I was having beers with the mechanics because like they pull
Oh,
you out
right,
when you're in
right.
the way taking pictures. It's not Lewis who tells you go away. It's the mechanics that help you. And I got along very well. I really liked them. But I had also a couple of beers. That's where I'm super bad at. Like I'm gonna say yes to every beer that gets offered over there. And I see that in the data very, very well.
Now, having said that, you're doing Sober
Correct.
October,
I
and,
said no.
you're successful at that.
Yeah. The
So
moment I
you're a light switch.
100%. I'm an on or off,
Yeah.
and it is
Nothing in moderation.
nothing in
All
moderation.
in.
Alcohol, red meat, and sport, by the way, too. Like I'm either full in. I don't know if you see the data of June, for example. In June, I did some stupid. I thought of you a lot in
Okay,
June,
let's
Will,
do it.
because one day you told me that the way you started was you overtrained when you were in college, right?
Totally.
So you went too hard on training. I did exactly that in June. Like
Oh, wow.
I tried to train as much as I could in June, and I even did it publicly in some sort of a challenge because I did a bet. I told the internet, if you outtrain me in cycling, running,
This was June to
or
the moon.
yeah, June to the moon, or swimming, I give you $1,000.
Did anyone beat you?
13 people,
So you gave out 13 grand.
correct.
Look
I
at
need
you.
I need to negotiate the contract for
Yeah,
next year.
wow.
Will I need
Wow.
money? I'm broke.
So your average strain in June was in the top 4th percentile
Of the
compared
world?
compared to all other male members your age. So that's pretty good. Your
Come
average
on,
strain in June was 16.4,
come on.
and in May it was 12. So you really you really went up. And your average recovery score was lower in June. So you had 44% recovery, which was lower than your July average of 55%. You had a bunch of red recovery days, 12 red recovery days in June. So you were training when you were run down too. So
100%.
that's
I did.
actually a good way to overtrain.
Yeah, it was
Um,
stupid. I did 400 miles bike rides in 2 days.
oh my
Like
gosh. At one
legit.
point you rode your bike for 20 hours.
No, for 43 hours.
Oh my gosh.
So it was like I don't the data, and that's one complaint I have. If you do sports for longer than 24 hours, it doesn't show up. Will, you
We're
need
gonna
to
fix that.
please fix that.
I'm
I had
actually
a
making a note of that.
43-hour bike ride and it didn't show.
Well, my guess is it split it into 2 because we
Correct.
have it as 20 hours.
Correct. Yeah.
So, that's funny. So, how did you feel during that
Horrible. It was
adventure?
stupid, but I cycled for money, like I tried to
Yeah,
beat other people, but they were too good. Like they were not beatable. I also wanted to do some stuff that I never did before. It was a personal thing too. And my father died when I was 20, and the last thing we really did together was a long cycling tour, like a bike packing
sure.
tour to our summer vacation for 2 weeks. So I now went back and did exactly that route, but without a stop. So like before we did it in 12 days. And now I did it in one thing from Hamburg to Heidelberg, my hometown. So I just had a couple of bucket list items I could scroll, because I went crazy in June. I did all of this to do an Ironman in July. So I had to train. And once again, the on off moderate, the normal person, like your employee Ollie, for example, he trains 2 years for a half Ironman. I trained 1 month for a full Ironman. And I'm not taking him seriously anymore because he's only a half Ironman.
Yeah,
I'm like,
right.
whenever we
You're a
talk,
different
I'm
guy.
like,
Yeah.
I don't know what you're talking about. But at the end, I go super hard on June, which is stupid. I'm aware of that. Then I completed the Ironman. I'm very proud of that.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. But look at the data in August, because I didn't do anything in August. Like
Yeah,
that's my biggest
you shut it down in
problem. Yeah,
August. Yeah.
like nothing. And no sports,
So you're just
just
all or nothing, man.
correct.
What did it take for you to get through the Ironman? Was that one of those things where when you showed up, you're like, I'm gonna finish this if I've got, one leg and one arm by the end of it.
I cried, and like it was by far the most willpower I ever needed. I did 2 marathons last year, and I'm 250 pounds already. Like
Yeah.
I'm not a skinny small guy, and I have some willpower, but it took all of it in that Ironman day. Like it was the run. I'm stupid. I thought I'm a big cyclist, and I can swim. So I did the swim. I did the cycling. I was like, okay. To be fair, it rained cats and dogs, and I'm not sure if you're allowed to say that anymore. But
It's okay.
it was a horrible day, very very cold. So it was really struggling on the bike. But I never thought about what happens with that small little marathon run afterward. Like I thought, cross the bridge when you reach it. That bridge was pretty bad. Like I've hit like I there's footage of me crying and stopping and saying, but I thought a lot of, like, I met a couple of very inspiring people like Jonas Deichmann, like a German guy who ran and cycled across the US, or he just did 120 Ironmans
Oh
in a
my
row
gosh.
consecutive. So like he's holding the world record for that. And I'm thinking of these people, if they
Every day in a row.
every day in a row.
Isn't that unbelievable?
Did you see that Australian guy who just ran 1,000 miles in one track? Crazy guy. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, very, very impressive. Like those people, I
He ran 1,000 miles without ever stopping.
he did sleep in
Oh,
between,
he would
but
sleep.
the footage is insane. Like he's the moment, like on day 8 or something, the way he wakes up and tries to walk the first, it's insane. Like he's really Ned is his name. I can send him
Yeah,
to you.
send that to
He's
me. I'll
really
check it
really
out.
cool, very inspiring person. Um, and I think of these people, if they can finish, I should finish too. And to be fair, I have a big mouth, especially in
You
the
told a
internet.
lot of people you were
And
doing
if
this.
I talk about it, I need to deliver afterwards. So I've regretted having such a big mouth.
At
But
any point,
then
did you feel injured during it?
no,
Okay.
not at all.
So as long as
But
you don't feel injured, it's just a test of the
yeah,
mind.
and it was a group effort. To be fair, like, and we're in the US, so we can pull some heartbreaking stories. My whole family was there. Like the run was in small rounds, and my 18-year-old daughter helped me run a half marathon. A 13-year-old daughter helped me run 2 laps, and my 6-year-old son ran a little bit with me,
Oh,
and
there you
they
go.
were
Whole
all
family.
supporting there, and it was a group effort, and it was really, really, really fun
Let's
to
do a
finish.
little journal analysis. So
Yeah.
these are the behaviors that you're tracking.
Oh,
So ice bath, you're doing 57% of the time,
yes.
which by the way is 6 times more often than the average member on Whoop.
I'm a big ice bath
So big
person.
ice bath
Yeah,
guy. So you're doing it 2 out of 3 days essentially.
correct. Yeah, and maybe sometimes I'm missing. Like I'm
End
trying
of
to do it
day,
daily.
first thing in the day, after a
First,
workout, when?
first thing, and before workouts.
Oh,
Like
so you do it twice
yeah, sometimes, yeah.
on the same day.
I have 2 ice baths. One on my at my house, and one at my office.
I
So
would,
whenever you visit, I'm gonna put you in the ice bath. Every visitor has to go in the ice
by the
bath.
way, no problem. I'm a big ice bath guy myself.
It's good,
I
right?
I think it's terrific, and I've got them everywhere I go. I've got 2 at the office. I've got one on my rooftop at home. I've got one. There's one at my squash club where I play
Yeah.
squash. So I have no excuse. Like anywhere I go, I should be able to do an ice bath.
I do it on important days also. Like it helps me so much in my brain. Like if I know I have a big task, an important meeting, a podcast I
Yeah,
should deliver, I do an ice bath before, and I'm like my brain works better.
brain works better, a little bit happier. I think.
very much happier.
Yeah.
But my wife is way better than me. Like
She does it every day.
she does it every day. Not a complaint, not a whinge. I'm complaining. Like, because we have
How cold do you do?
it's 2.4 degrees Celsius. So that's like the coldest you can. It's renotherapy. It's like one of the best of the best. So
We're going to look up what that is in
it's cold,
Fahrenheit.
36, I think. Cold.
36 degrees Fahrenheit is very cold. I do 40, but 36 has me beat. Morning sunlight, 86% positive
Yeah.
affirmative rate. So you're getting out in the sun. That's a good California thing.
I live in
No
California.
excuse.
I do all my calls while walking.
Huh.
So that
Could
changed
you
a
with all
lot.
these healthy habits?
Yeah. But I still
That's 3 times more often than the average member. Alcohol, affirmative rate 40%.
How do
You
we change that?
you do that 1.8 times more than the average member. I think a big theme here is that you do more than other people.
Positive and negative.
Yeah. You do sauna 1.6 times more than the average person. Although 16%, that's not crazy. A lot of people just don't do saunas. Magnesium you like to take.
Yeah,
It looks like you're spending a lot of time around family and friends.
correct.
Protein, hydration. There's a good list of things.
I just need to cut alcohol and I need to look at my nutrition. That's the one thing. I have a couple of questions
Okay,
for
let's
you
do
as
it.
well. When did you last took off your Whoop?
I have a data streak that is the longest on Whoop of any human being. My data streak is 3,181 days.
What the?
So that I am getting close to having
That's 10
collected
years.
for 10 years straight. How many recoveries do you have? You're gonna go to the
In
homepage and tap
yeah,
on your head.
1,329.
It's a lot.
Good, right?
Yeah.
I'm proud, and I think that's
We
why.
love it, man.
I mean,
We're
at the
grateful
end,
to have you.
you know that I brought in a couple of people. That's because I really love the product.
Let me just say, first of all, very grateful for your persistence. I really appreciate everything you do for Whoop.
You know, the reality is, I may have some following on Instagram, but do you know the theory of 1,000 true fans? Like
I
that
love it.
paper? Yeah,
I love
it's
that
amazing
thing.
thing. I'm living that.
Describe that just because not everyone might know what that is.
If you find 1,000 people that you have a true impact on over a longer amount of time, it's worth way more, also financially as well as internally, than it is to reach 1 million people with one shot, whatever it is.
And by the way, the startup analogy here is a lot of startups think they should target huge markets. And actually, if you start with a very small market, but you find people within that market who really love what you do, it gives you the opportunity to grow. So this whole principle is around this idea of 1,000 true fans.
And those 1,000 true fans I have with Whoop in Germany, like people
Yeah.
approach me and say, "You changed my life
Oh, wow.
because you brought me to Whoop." So thank you
Thank you.
for
That's good.
I'm collecting your glitter here, but it changes people, and that's an insane quality for the internal. Yeah, it's great.
Well,
Thank you.
thank you, Paul. This has been fun.
Thank you.
Big thank you to Paul for coming on the Whoop podcast. A reminder, this is our biggest sale of the year. 12 months for $199. That is our best deal of the year. Check that out at whoop.com. And that's a wrap, folks. You can find us on social. You can learn more at whoop.com. And we'll see you next week on the Whoop podcast.